It's not just unions demanding it. Now the International Monetary Fund is telling the U.S. to increase the federal minimum wage. The same IMF that relies on our funding and our bailouts. And Gary B. says this is even more proof why we shouldn't do it.
It's idiotic. You know, every time I read about this minimum wage issue, whether it's from the IMF or the Obama administration, it just bugs me. First of all, raising the minimum wage doesn't cure poverty. Why? Because most people earning the minimum wage are young, part-time teenagers working part-time jobs. Their average family income is $53,000, well over the poverty line. So where does this money come from? I know people think out there when you raise the minimum wage, it comes from those greedy owners out there, those corporations, the guy that owns the 200 McDonald's franchise. Well, let's just say that's true. Well, where does that money then go? It goes to those workers, and then that owner has less money at the end of the year for profits, of which he can then build other businesses and hire other people. It's not a winning situation. It's absolutely idiotic. But thank you, IMF, for telling us how we should run our country.
Well, you know, people on the other side, Gary, are just as hot about this as you are. We've seen lots and lots of protests. And Jonas, the IMF says we have the lowest minimum wage of all their members, and that's part of the reason why they want us to hike our wages.
That would be a really strong point if the other countries had really low unemployment, but they don't. In most of the European countries, they have higher unemployment than America. There's a couple countries like Japan and Canada that actually have high minimum wages and low employment. But in general, you're going to have higher unemployment when you raise wages. Now, that is not always the reason not to raise them. Like the gas tax, they haven't been indexed to inflation, so whatever levels that we decided we should have should probably continue at those levels, so it's actually artificially low right now. But we don't have to listen to the IMF. We're not one of the countries that has to take their advice to get loans to stop crises, so we can ignore them and watch our own states, which have raised it, and see what happens in the next few years. Maybe some good things will happen.
John, what do you think?
I think if you create jobs, you don't have to worry about minimum wage. Look at the different states that have fracking. They don't have to worry about minimum wage. You have to worry about housing, and you don't have enough workers in those places. Look, there's no way to compare Tupelo, Mississippi to New York City as far as wages go. That's why states need to do this state by state. 22 states and the District of Columbia have a higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage, and that is how it should be done. If Seattle wants to pass a $15 minimum wage, which they're doing right now, they should be allowed to do that because of the economics of their situation. That doesn't translate to Birmingham, Alabama, and making this argument nationwide makes absolutely no sense.
Sasha, should we be listening to the IMF? At the same time, it's telling us that our GDP, that's basically the best way that we can measure growth, is going to go down to 2% this year. Is this the right time to hike?
Well, I mean, the IMF, one of the things they do is study different countries' economies. So, I mean, it's just sort of, they studied our economy, and this is something that they think is a valid point. But in terms of whether we should raise the minimum wage, I mean, you know, it's funny, Gary B., you think it's so, your argument is, you so clearly think that the other side is idiotic, and I think yours is idiotic. It's interesting, like, how strongly you differ. To me, it's just about what Jonas said. It's not indexed to inflation or cost of living. So it hasn't gone up since 2009. The value of that $7.25 is down 6%. So, you know, this idea that there shouldn't be an increase and that you should work for less money every year because it doesn't go up with inflation makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, Gary K., what do you say to the IMF?
You don't want to know what I would say to the IMF.
I'm sure it would be worse than idiotic.
Yeah, look, it is simple. When you mandate higher costs to business owners, they're going to make decisions you're not going to want to hear. And that's why the nonpartisan, let me say nonpartisan CBO said 500,000 jobs would be lost if we were raised above $10. Now, John was right. 22 states and the D.C. are already above it. And there's a total of 34 states, including some of the 22, are in legislation right now to raise it. Good for them. Let them do it. Let it do it on a state-by-state basis based on the business atmosphere there, and all be well. But all this mandating, including the Obamacare, only hurts the economy and hurts business.
Okay, Gary B., last word, quickly.
I am going to have to rebut Sasha's point. She said my side is idiotic, the other side is idiotic. Here's the difference. My side uses logic and simple economics. The other side uses pure emotion.
No, that's 100%
the
wrong.
difference.
My side does.
Well done, Gary.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much.